Dr. Marcus Chen had seen many unusual things during his 15 years working at the Galactic Medical Station orbiting Kepler 442b, but nothing quite like this. The emergency alarm screamed through the sterile corridors as he rushed toward Trauma Bay 7, his medical kit bouncing against his hip with each hurried step. The patient was small, no bigger than a human toddler, but the similarities ended there. The child's skin shimmered with an iridescent blue-green pattern that reminded Marcus of peacock feathers. 4 delicate arms sprouted from a torso that seemed too fragile to house vital organs, and large, luminous eyes dominated a face that was both alien and heartbreakingly innocent. "What happened?" Marcus asked as he approached the treatment table where Dr. Yenna, a Thaxian physician, worked frantically over the tiny form. "Vorthak child, maybe 3 cycles old in their years." Dr. Yenna's translator converted her clicking speech into standard. "Severe trauma from a transport accident. Lost too much ichor, their blood equivalent. We need a compatible donor immediately or we lose her." Marcus pulled up the child's medical readings on his tablet. The biosignatures were failing fast. "What about the blood bank?" "Nothing compatible. Vorthak ichor is incredibly complex. 17 different proteins, mineral compositions that vary by individual genetics. We've sent requests to every Vorthak settlement within 3 systems, but the fastest response would take 18 hours. "She doesn't have 18 hours, Marcus observed, watching the child's breathing become more labored. "Exactly." Dr. Yenna's 4 eyes met his gaze. "There is one possibility. Though it's never been attempted, human blood has shown remarkable adaptability in emergency xenobiology studies. Your plasma proteins might provide enough support to keep her stable until proper ichor arrives." Marcus didn't hesitate. He was already rolling up his sleeve. "How much do you need?" "Marcus, wait." Dr. Yenna grabbed his arm with one of her tentacles. "This isn't just a simple transfusion. Vorthak physiology bonds with foreign biological material in ways we don't fully understand. There could be permanent genetic mixing, unknown consequences. The ethics board would never approve this without months of study." The child's monitor began emitting the sharp, rapid beeping that every medical professional dreaded. Her vital signs were crashing. "Ethics board can file their complaints after she's alive," Marcus said, settling into the donor chair beside the treatment table. "Hook me up." As the transfusion equipment hummed to life, Marcus watched his blood flow through transparent tubes toward the dying child. The process felt different from normal blood donations. There was a strange, tingling sensation, almost electric, that ran from the needle site up through his arm and into his chest. "Remarkable," Dr. Yenna breathed, monitoring both patients. "Her cellular regeneration is accelerating beyond normal parameters. Your blood isn't just providing temporary support, it's actively healing the trauma sites." Marcus felt increasingly lightheaded, but not from blood loss. There was something else happening, something that made his vision sharper and his hearing more acute. Colors seemed more vivid, and he could swear he was sensing electromagnetic fields from the medical equipment around them. "How much more?" he asked. "We should have enough, but—" Dr. Yenna paused, studying her readouts with growing amazement. "Marcus, your blood is completely integrating with her system. This level of compatibility should be impossible between species separated by millions of years of evolution." The child's eyes fluttered open, and when her gaze met Marcus's, he felt a jolt of connection that went far deeper than visual contact. It was as if their minds had briefly touched, sharing something wordless but profound. "Is she going to be okay?" Marcus asked, though somehow he already knew the answer. "More than okay. Her recovery rate is unprecedented. The cellular fusion between your blood and her ichor has created something entirely new. A hybrid biological matrix that's actually stronger than either original substance." Over the following days, Marcus remained at the medical station for observation. The effects of the transfusion on his own physiology were becoming apparent. His reflexes had sharpened dramatically, his immune system showed remarkable improvements, and he found himself understanding languages he'd never heard before without the aid of a translator. The child, who they learned was named Zixandra, recovered with equal remarkability. She seemed to have gained an intuitive understanding of human technology and could manipulate medical equipment with a precision that amazed the staff. The genetic bonding appears to have been mutual, Dr. Yenna explained during one of Marcus's checkups. You've both gained beneficial traits from the other's species. This could revolutionize our understanding of cross-species medical intervention. But Marcus was more concerned with simpler matters. He'd grown attached to the bright, curious child who followed him around the station whenever her mother wasn't visiting. Zixandra's people were nomadic traders, and her family would soon continue their journey across the galaxy. The day of their departure, Zixandra's mother, Veltara, approached Marcus in the station's observation deck. She was tall and elegant, her adult Vorthak form bearing the same iridescent skin patterns as her daughter, but with additional golden threads that indicated maturity and status. "Dr. Chen," she said, her command of standard much better than most translators could manage. "My daughter lives because of your sacrifice. In my culture, such a debt can only be repaid in one way." Marcus felt a chill of premonition. "What do you mean?" Veltara's large eyes seemed to glow with inner light. "You have become bonded with my child through the sharing of life essence. Among my people, this creates a sacred connection that cannot be broken. You are now considered part of our family line. I appreciate the honor, but there is more." Veltara moved closer, and Marcus caught a scent like cinnamon and ozone. "I am approaching my fertile cycle when I will bear my next offspring. The bonding between you and Zixandra has proven that our species are compatible in ways we never imagined. I wish you to father this child." Marcus's mind reeled. "I don't think you understand human reproduction. I understand more than you might think." Veltara's hand touched his arm, and he felt that same electric connection he'd experienced during the transfusion. "The genetic bonding has changed us both. You carry Vorthak traits now, just as Zixandra carries human ones. The child we create would bridge our species in ways that could transform both our peoples." Before Marcus could respond, she continued. "I am not asking for your answer now. My fertile cycle will not begin for 3 standard months. But know this. Refusing would be seen as rejecting not just me, but the sacred bond that saved my daughter's life. It would bring great dishonor to both our families." As Veltara and Zixandra departed the station, Marcus stood at the observation port watching their ship disappear into the star field. His reflection in the transparent aluminum showed the subtle changes the transfusion had wrought. His eyes now held flecks of the same iridescent blue-green as Zixandra's, and his skin had a faint luminous quality in certain light. Dr. Yenna joined him at the window. "She's serious, you know. Vorthak culture places enormous importance on genetic debts. Refusing her request would effectively make you an enemy of her entire clan. And accepting it would make me the father of a hybrid child in a galaxy that's barely learned to tolerate different species existing in the same space," Marcus replied. "What kind of life would that child have?" "Perhaps," Dr. Yenna said thoughtfully. "That's exactly the kind of life the galaxy needs." 3 days later, as Marcus reviewed patient files in his office, he received a priority message from the Galactic Medical Council. The footage of Zixandra's miraculous recovery had been studied by xenobiologists across known space. The implications were staggering. The message was brief, but world-changing. "Dr. Chen, your cross-species transfusion has opened possibilities we never considered. We're establishing a new research division focused on beneficial genetic exchange between species. We'd like you to head the project." Marcus stared at the message for a long time, thinking about a small alien child with his blood running through her veins, and a woman who believed their species were meant to be joined. Outside his window, ships from a dozen different worlds docked at the station, their crews living and working together despite the vast biological differences between them. Maybe the galaxy was ready for something new after all. His tablet chimed with another message, this one from Veltara's ship. It contained only coordinates and a simple statement. When you are ready to discuss our future, find me here. Marcus saved the coordinates and returned to his patient files, but his mind kept wandering to possibilities he'd never imagined. In 3 months, he would have to make a decision that could change not just his life, but the future of 2 entire species. The question was, did he have the courage to take that step into the unknown? 2 months had passed since Veltara's departure, and Marcus found himself struggling to focus on anything other than the decision that loomed before him. The new research division kept him busy. Dozens of species were volunteering for compatibility studies, hoping to unlock the secrets of the human-Vorthak genetic bonding. But every breakthrough only reminded him of the choice he had to make. The breakthrough came unexpectedly during a routine analysis of his post-transfusion blood work. Dr. Yenna burst into his lab with excitement, radiating from her normally composed demeanor. "Marcus, you need to see this," she said, projecting a molecular diagram into the holographic display. "Your blood has been continuing to evolve since the transfusion. Look at these protein structures." The diagram showed complex chains unlike anything in standard human biology. The proteins seemed to shift and adapt even as Marcus watched, creating new configurations in real time. "What am I looking at?" Marcus asked. "Adaptive genetic material. Your DNA isn't just carrying Vorthak traits, it's learning to create new ones. These proteins could theoretically allow you to share beneficial genetic information with any species, not just Vorthak. You've become a living bridge for evolutionary advancement." Before Marcus could fully process the implications, his communication device chimed with an urgent message from the Space Traffic Control Center. "Dr. Chen, please report to Docking Bay 12 immediately. You have visitors." Marcus arrived at the docking bay to find Zixandra racing toward him on legs that seemed much longer than before. The child had grown considerably in 2 months, her development accelerated by the hybrid nature of her blood. Behind her, Veltara approached with graceful steps. But her usual composure seemed strained. "Uncle Marcus!" Zixandra called out, using the human term she'd learned during her recovery. The word sent an unexpected warmth through his chest. "Zix, you're so much bigger," Marcus said, kneeling to her level. Up close, he could see that her eyes now held flecks of brown, his eye color, mixed with her natural luminescence. "I can do new things," she said excitedly, placing her small hand on a nearby control panel. The panel's lights began cycling through patterns that shouldn't have been possible with standard interface protocols. "Watch this!" The docking bay's systems responded to her touch in ways that defied their programming. Environmental controls adjusted to optimal settings for both human and Vorthak physiology, while the gravity compensators created subtle variations that made movement more comfortable for everyone present. "She's been like this for weeks," Veltara explained, joining them. "The human traits continue to develop in unexpected ways. Our ship's computer systems have advanced beyond their original specifications just from her interactions with them." Marcus studied the child with growing amazement. "She's not just using the technology, she's improving it." "Yes, and that's why I had to return early." Veltara's expression grew serious. "Word of her abilities has spread among my people. There are those who see her as a gift to our species, but others view her as an abomination. My clan is divided, and some are calling for her isolation until the contamination can be studied and contained." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "Contamination?" "Not my words," Veltara said quickly. "But fear drives many decisions in our society, just as it does in yours. The Council of Genetic Purity has demanded that I present myself and my daughter for examination. They want to determine if the bonding can be reversed. And if it can't be? Marcus asked, though he dreaded the answer. Exile, for both of us. Veltara's voice carried a weight of generations. My family line would be severed from our clan's genetic heritage. Zixandra would grow up as an outcast. Marcus felt anger building in his chest, an emotion that seemed stronger and more focused than before his transformation. There has to be another option. There is. Veltara moved closer, and Marcus again felt that electric connection between them. If you accept my proposal and father my next child, it would prove that the bonding was not accidental contamination, but a deliberate evolution. A child created intentionally from our union would have legitimacy that Zixandra currently lacks. You're asking me to create a child to save another child. I'm asking you to create a future where hybrid children aren't seen as accidents to be corrected, but as stepping stones to something greater. Veltara's hand touched his, and images flooded his mind. Not quite telepathy, but shared understanding that transcended words. He saw Vorthak society as she knew it, ancient, traditional, but stagnating. Their genetic purity laws had prevented adaptation for millennia, leaving them vulnerable to diseases and environmental changes that other species had learned to overcome. He saw her own struggles as a scientist in a culture that prized genetic conformity above innovation. But he also saw her hopes. Dreams of children who could survive in any environment, who could bridge the gaps between species, who could solve problems that neither humans nor Vorthak could handle alone. The Council of Genetic Purity isn't just afraid of contamination, Marcus realized. They're afraid of being obsolete. Exactly. And they should be. Veltara's eyes blazed with determination. Evolution doesn't ask permission. It simply happens. But we can guide it, shape it, make it beneficial rather than random. Over the following days, Marcus found himself spending more time with both mother and daughter. Zixandra had taken to following him around the research lab, her natural curiosity enhanced by newfound human traits like persistence and analytical thinking. She asked questions that challenged his assumptions about biology, technology, and the nature of life itself. Uncle Marcus, she said one afternoon while he was reviewing genetic compatibility charts, why do some people not want others to be different? The question was so fundamentally human in its directness that Marcus had to smile. Fear, mostly. People are afraid of change, even when it might be good for them. But change is how things get better, Zixandra pointed out with the logic of a child who had never been taught that improvement was impossible. My body got better when it changed. The computer systems get better when I touch them. Why wouldn't people want to get better too? Because getting better sometimes means admitting that the way you were before wasn't perfect, Marcus explained. And some people have spent a long time believing their way was the only right way. That's silly, Zixandra declared. Then, with startling insight, she added, maybe they just need to see that being different doesn't mean being wrong. That evening, Marcus found Veltara in the station's botanical gardens, standing among earth flowers that had been genetically modified to thrive in the artificial environment. The irony wasn't lost on him. She's remarkable, he said, joining her beside a rose bush that bloomed in colors nature had never intended. She is the future, if we're brave enough to accept it. Veltara touched one of the impossible roses. These flowers were created by combining Earth genetics with adaptive traits from a dozen other worlds. No one calls them abominations. They're considered beautiful. Children aren't flowers, Marcus pointed out. No, they're much more important. Veltara turned to face him. Marcus, I need to know your decision. My fertile cycle begins in 1 week, and the Council of Genetic Purity has demanded that I appear before them immediately afterward. If I'm carrying your child when I face them, it changes everything." Marcus had been dreading this moment, but as he looked at Veltara, really looked at her, he realized his decision had been made long ago. Not just when he'd rolled up his sleeve to save a dying child, but in every moment since, when he'd chosen to embrace the changes rather than fear them. "What would the child be like?" he asked. "I don't know," Veltara admitted. "But based on the models Dr. Yenna has developed, they would likely have the best traits of both species: enhanced intelligence, natural technological aptitude, improved physical capabilities, and most importantly, the ability to adapt to any environment." "And the risks?" "The same as any child, uncertainty, but also the same as any child, infinite possibility." Marcus looked out at the stars visible through the garden's transparent dome. Ships from dozens of worlds moved among them, carrying people who had once been strangers to each other but were now neighbors, colleagues, friends. The galaxy had already begun the process of bringing species together. Maybe it was time to take the next step. "There's something you need to know," he said finally. "Dr. Yenna's latest research suggests that my genetic changes are still progressing. Any child I father might inherit capabilities we haven't even discovered yet." "Are you trying to talk me out of this?" Veltara asked, with what sounded like amusement. "I'm trying to make sure you understand what you're asking for." "I'm asking for evolution. I'm asking for a future where my daughter doesn't have to hide what she is. I'm asking you to help me prove that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker." Veltara's hand found his again, and this time the connection felt like coming home. "Are you willing to take that leap with me?" Marcus thought about Zixandra's questions, about the impossible roses blooming around them, about the message from the Galactic Medical Council that still waited for his response. The galaxy was changing whether the Council of Genetic Purity approved or not. The only question was whether that change would be guided by fear or by hope. "Yes," he said, "but we do this together, as partners. I'm not just donating genetic material. I'm committing to being a father, to helping raise whatever extraordinary child we create." Veltara's smile was radiant. "Then we should discuss the practical arrangements. Vorthak reproduction isn't quite as simple as human reproduction." As they walked back toward the medical center, Marcus felt a sense of rightness that he hadn't experienced since the moment he'd decided to save Zixandra's life. He was about to embark on a journey that would change not just his life, but potentially the future of two species. The real adventure was just beginning. The Vorthak reproductive process turned out to be far more complex than Marcus had imagined. Unlike human conception, it involved a month-long bonding ritual where both parents' genetic material slowly integrated through shared meditation, synchronized biorhythms, and what Veltara called essence weaving. Dr. Yenna monitored the process with fascination and growing excitement. "The genetic fusion is happening in real time," she reported during one of their weekly checkups. "Rather than random combination, your DNA and Veltara's are actively communicating, selecting optimal traits from both species." Marcus found the experience transformative in ways he hadn't expected. Each day of the bonding process deepened his connection not just with Veltara, but with Vorthak culture and biology. He began to understand their language instinctively, could sense the electromagnetic fields they used for long-distance communication, and most remarkably, started to perceive time differently, experiencing moments with the extended awareness that allowed Vorthak to navigate hyperspace without computer assistance. "How are you feeling?" Veltara asked on the 20th day of the process. They were in the meditation chamber she'd constructed in her temporary quarters, surrounded by crystals that resonated at frequencies that promoted genetic harmony. "Like I'm becoming someone new," Marcus answered honestly. "But still fundamentally me, if that makes sense." "Perfect sense. That's exactly how this should feel. Veltara's hand rested on her abdomen, where their child was beginning to form. I can feel them already. Their consciousness is remarkable. They're aware in ways that neither Vorthak nor human children typically are at this stage. 3 days later, everything changed. The Council of Genetic Purity arrived without warning, their massive ship appearing in the system with the kind of entrance designed to intimidate. The vessel was ancient by galactic standards, its hull carved with symbols that predated modern Vorthak writing. Marcus was reviewing research data when the station's alarm system activated. The announcement came in multiple languages. All personnel to secure positions. Diplomatic vessel requesting immediate boarding privileges. Diplomatic, Marcus muttered, watching through the observation window as the Council's ship deployed what looked suspiciously like weapon arrays. Right! Veltara appeared beside him, her face pale with worry. They weren't supposed to arrive for another month. Something's wrong. The delegation that boarded the station was imposing. 12 Vorthak elders wearing ceremonial robes that seemed to absorb light, making them appear as moving shadows with glowing eyes. Their leader, who introduced himself as Purity Keeper Thexander, spoke in the old tongue that required no translator. His words carried meaning directly to the listener's mind. Veltara of the 7th Descent, you stand accused of willful genetic contamination and the creation of an aberrant offspring. Surrender yourself and the contaminated child for purification trials. My daughter is not contaminated, Veltara replied, moving to stand protectively in front of Zixandra, who had been quietly working on a puzzle that involved quantum mathematics. She is evolved. Purity Keeper Thexander's attention turned to Marcus with an intensity that felt like being examined by a microscope. And you are the alien whose primitive genetics have poisoned our pure lineage. Marcus stepped forward, feeling the protective instincts that had grown stronger throughout the bonding process. With respect, my genetics have saved your pure lineage. Without intervention, Zixandra would have died. Better death than defilement, Thexander declared. The child will be purified, and you will be held accountable for the damage you have caused. That was when Zixandra spoke up, her young voice carrying an authority that silenced the entire room. Grandfather Thexander, you're being silly. The Purity Keeper's glowing eyes narrowed. Child, you will show proper respect to your elders. I am showing respect, Zixandra replied with the devastating logic of childhood. I'm trying to help you understand that you're wrong. Watch this. She placed her small hands on the station's main computer interface. Immediately, the entire system began optimizing itself in ways that should have taken teams of engineers months to achieve. Life support became more efficient, power distribution reorganized for maximum effectiveness, and the defensive systems upgraded themselves using principles that none of the engineers had ever seen before. I made the station better, Zixandra explained, just like Uncle Marcus's blood made me better. If being different makes things work better, then different is good, right? The council members exchanged glances that Marcus couldn't interpret, but Veltara's sharp intake of breath suggested the demonstration had significant implications. Purity Keeper Thexander approached the interface and studied the readouts with growing amazement. These improvements! How did you know to make them? I just touched it and asked what it needed to work better, Zixandra said. Everything wants to work better. You just have to listen. Dr. Yenna chose that moment to arrive with a data tablet in her hands, her translator working overtime to keep up with her excitement. Marcus, you need to see this. The genetic analysis of your developing offspring shows capabilities that are unprecedented. She projected a holographic display that made everyone in the room step back in surprise. The genetic model showed a being with traits that seemed almost mythical: enhanced cognitive processing, natural technological interface abilities, resistance to radiation and disease, and most remarkably, the ability to process and share genetic improvements with other beings through simple contact. This child, Dr. Yenna continued, would theoretically be able to help any species adapt to environmental challenges, resist diseases, or enhance their natural abilities. They could be a living solution to problems that have plagued biological evolution for millions of years. Purity Keeper Thexander studied the projection for a long time before speaking. You're suggesting this hybrid could improve pure Vorthak genetics? I'm suggesting, Marcus said, stepping forward, that the concept of pure genetics is a luxury your people can't afford anymore. The galaxy is changing. Environmental pressures, new diseases, technological challenges that require biological adaptation. Isolation won't protect you from any of that. Veltara moved to stand beside Marcus, her hand finding his. The Council speaks of purity, but what good is purity if it leads to extinction? My daughter has abilities that could help our entire species survive and thrive in ways we never imagined. One of the younger council members, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. Purity Keeper, perhaps we should consider the evidence. The child's abilities are clearly beneficial, and the genetic projections suggest. I have seen the projections, Thexander interrupted, but doctrine is clear. Genetic mixing leads to chaos and the loss of our essential nature. Does it? Zixandra asked, looking up at the imposing figure with innocent curiosity. What's your essential nature? The question seemed to catch the Purity Keeper off guard. We are the children of the first light, keepers of the pure genetic flame that... That's just words, Zixandra said. What do you actually do? What makes you you? Thexander struggled for a response, and Marcus realized that the child had inadvertently asked the most challenging question possible. If Vorthak identity was truly based on genetics, rather than culture, achievements, or values, then what did that identity actually mean? We preserve the wisdom of our ancestors, Thexander finally said. I can access the wisdom of lots of ancestors now, Zixandra replied. Uncle Marcus's and Mama's and yours. Having more wisdom is better than having less wisdom, right? The conversation was interrupted by an emergency alert from Station Control. Medical emergency in Research Lab 7. Dr. Chen requested immediately. Marcus started to move, but Veltara grabbed his arm. It's starting, she said. The child is coming early. The next several hours blurred together in a chaos of medical procedures, genetic monitoring, and the surreal experience of having the Council of Genetic Purity witness the birth of the galaxy's first intentionally created human Vorthak hybrid. The birth itself was unlike anything in medical literature. The child seemed to emerge in stages, their genetic structure stabilizing in real time as their body adapted to existence outside the womb. Dr. Yenna worked frantically to monitor both mother and child while Marcus found himself experiencing sympathetic changes, his enhanced senses expanding further, his understanding of Vorthak physiology deepening with each passing moment. When their son finally took his first breath, the room fell silent. The child was beautiful in ways that transcended species. His skin held the same iridescent quality as his mother's, but with patterns that seemed to shift and adapt based on his surroundings. His eyes held depths that suggested intelligence far beyond his moments of age, and when he looked directly at Marcus, the connection was immediate and profound. By the first light, whispered one of the council members. He's perfect. Purity Keeper Thexander approached the medical bed with something like awe. May I touch him? Veltara nodded weakly, exhausted but radiating happiness. When Thexander's finger touched the child's hand, the Purity Keeper gasped and stumbled backward. What is it? Dr. Yenna asked, immediately scanning for any problems. He shared something with me, Thexander said, his voice filled with wonder. A vision of our people as they could be, stronger, wiser, capable of surviving anything the galaxy could challenge us with. This child, he could save our entire species. Marcus looked down at his son, their son, and felt a completeness he'd never imagined possible. What should we call him? In human tradition, the father often chooses the name, Veltara said. And in Vorthak tradition, names are earned through accomplishments, Marcus replied. But I think he's already accomplished something remarkable. He looked around the room, at the council members whose certainty had been shaken, at Zixandra, who was gently touching her brother's other hand, at Dr. Yenna documenting everything for the scientific community that would study these events for generations. Bridge, Marcus said finally. His name is Bridge. Purity Keeper. Thexander nodded slowly. Bridge. Yes. A bridge between what we were and what we could become. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the research station, watching ships from dozens of worlds arrive for the first interspecies genetic cooperation conference. In his arms, Bridge gurgled happily, his eyes tracking the movement of vessels in ways that suggested he was already beginning to understand their navigation systems. Zixandra pressed against his side, now officially his adopted daughter and Bridge's protective older sister. "Uncle Papa Marcus," she said, using the hybrid title she'd created to acknowledge his multiple roles in her life. "Are you happy?" Marcus thought about everything that had changed since the day he'd donated blood to save a dying alien child. His life, his biology, his understanding of what family could mean, all of it transformed beyond recognition. "Yes," he said simply. "I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Through the observation window, he could see Veltara in the main conference hall, addressing delegates from dozens of species about the possibilities of guided evolution and beneficial genetic exchange. The Council of Genetic Purity had become the Council of Genetic Advancement, with Thexander as one of their most vocal advocates for interspecies cooperation. Bridge reached up and touched Marcus's face, and in that moment of contact, Marcus felt a flash of the future his son would help create. A galaxy where species barriers were bridges rather than walls, where diversity was strength rather than division, where children like Bridge and Zixandra would grow up in a universe that celebrated rather than feared the beautiful complexity of life. It had all started with a simple decision to help a dying child. Now it had become something that would reshape the galaxy itself. Sometimes, Marcus reflected, the most important choices are the ones that feel like no choice at all.